which is, roast it, rest for a week and then use it, it's a consistent system.
Yeah.
And I think, maintaining consistency through roast and brewing is critical,
Yeah. Well, that was a revelation for me. And I think I just started realizing it about 2 months ago.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Who knows? It could be, maybe it's not 5 days or 7 days or whatever your week is. It could be 3 days.
Right.
Maybe you'll get the absolute maximum out of it in 3 days. And maybe
I should take some notes.
Yeah, maybe it's 10 days, I think that's the versatility around coffee, is the fact that it really is this ever-changing, growing kind of organism.
Mm-hmm.
That, again, doesn't do anything good for the commercial coffee roaster, but for us, I think it gives us added texture to play with, Yep. Hello, everyone. How's it going?
Hello, I'm just about to dial up my espresso here.
Oh, look at that! Oh, the little AeroPress, Chris.
Yep. So I've got it on the scales here, and I've just tiered it. So that's just reading 16.05 grams of coffee just gone in there.
Nice.
Now, Wayne, I should re-tear that before I add the water?
I would re-tear that if I was you.
Yep. So I've re-teared that. The water has just coming off the boil now.
Good.
So exactly how much water am I going to add for your brew ratio?
You've got 16. So you want to go for what brew ratio? 1:2?
You were talking about 15, weren't you, for AeroPress?
Oh. Yeah. 1:15, or even I would say for you, Chris, go for about a 1:12. So how much coffee did you put in?
16 grams.
16. 16 times, let's go 16 times 12. 192 mils of water, or 192 grams of water.
All right. So I'm not actually going to get 192. I get about 170 in here.
Perfect. Do it. So what I do is I work that backwards. So I say, okay, so you're going to get 170. So I go 170 divided by 16 grams, and that gives me 10. So you're actually on a 1:10 ratio, Chris. It's actually 1:10.62. So let's say 1:11 ratio. Now for AeroPress, it all depends on what you're wanting to get out of that. So for example, Mary, you've done a 1:15. Am I correct in saying that? Chris is going for more a 1:10, 1:11. So out of an AeroPress, traditionally, why you brew AeroPress is you want something a little bit fuller, a little bit richer, and something that is almost espresso-like. I mean, you'll never get it to espresso. The closest brew method we've ever found gets it to espresso is the, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the bun filter equipment. Okay. You see it in all your diners and restaurants and that type of stuff. But anyway, Bun made a unit called the Trifecta. And that's the closest we could ever get to espresso with brewed coffee. So Chris, what do you typically do now with that? Do you leave it like that for a number of minutes?
Yeah, but the number is 1.
Okay. And then what do you do?
So it's a 15-second bloom, 15-second stir, 45-second brew after the stir.
Okay.
And then it's a 30-second.
No. Wait. Okay, cool.
Yep.
No problem.
I'm looking at my clock. Yep.
No. So what I wanted you to do, just before you turned it over, so you noticed how you turned it over and it slightly just pulsed out a little bit?
Yeah, I usually put the cup on top before I turn.
So the next time, what I want you to do is I want you to just push all of that air out.
I'll push the air out first. Yeah.
So just push the air out. So just bring the AeroPress down to the water, so you'll hear the air will actually hiss out.
Yeah.
And then you turn it over, and first of all, you'll have no drips coming out of the AeroPress. Secondly, what you're doing with a lot of air in your AeroPress like that is is you're pushing the air down through the coffee. And we know that what the air is going to do is the air is going to push through coffee and find the least path of resistance. So what that traditionally does, Chris, is that will move around your coffee and start to distribute that bed of coffee that you've worked so hard to kind of create. So I would like to see you take all of that air out first and then push water directly through coffee, you know? And that way you can maximize your brew ratio. You can actually maximize your saturation point of your coffee, if that makes sense.
Yep. Okay, so all done, and I've now got 150 grams in the cup.
Ah, okay, cool. Okay, cool. That makes sense. You've lost about, I'd say, close on about 20%.
Yeah, I've gone from 170 to 150, yeah.
Yeah, that's normal. Okay. That's normal. That's the saturation of water into your coffee bed. That will generally always happen with coffee. What you find is we can minimize that by adding extra water to it. The only problem then is we get too much saturation. So that's something that we can minimize only with certain brewing extractions, like for example, filter or a pour over, but you could risk not getting the flavor that you want to get. I say that's good, Chris. Give it a taste. Now, Chris, what coffee did you roast?
I did that.
And what degree?
I did the Kenyan AB.
Okay, cool.
And I followed your protocol. I just downloaded the profile and loaded it as it came and ran it.
Okay, cool. So you went for the medium roast Kenyan AB.
Correct.
Shaz, you asked what degree of water?
No, what degree is in 1.6? You just answered it, medium roast.
Oh, okay.
Because I wanted to match what Chris has done. So
okay, awesome.
I did do a 1.2 and a 1.6. So I'll do the 1.6.
Yeah, so Chris did the 1.6, Shaz. He stuck to the general default. Did you also do a Kenyan, Shaz?
I did a Rwandan, but I'll just follow Chris's method. I'll follow Chris's method.
And are you going to do AeroPress as well?
Yeah, and I'll match his. What grind setting did you do, Chris? Was there something close to a?
My grinder is one you probably haven't got anything like this. It's South Korean product. My grind setting that I use, that's like one step coarser than I use for espresso. So really, I'm pretty much giving it an espresso grind.
Yeah. Shaz, what grinder do you have? Shaz, what grinder do you have?
Sorry, I just muted myself. I've got a few hand grinders and I have a Baratza.
Okay, which one are you going to use for this? You're going to use the Baratza?
I think that'll just be easier.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely.
Well, if I was doing a coarser grind to match, to just do what I normally do for AeroPress, I'd use my Comandante. But if I'm just matching Chris's, I'll just throw it in the Baratza.
Yeah. So the Baratza, you generally use what, two? I think two on the Baratza? 2, 3?
2. Yeah.
2. Okay, cool.
Shall I put it up to 3 or?
No. I would go 2. Baratza, I haven't used a Baratza in a couple of months. Does it go 2, 2.5, or does it go 2, 3?
I want to kind of copy what Chris is doing.
No, 100%. But what I'm saying is the Baratza settings, do they go 2, 2, 3, or do they go 2, 2.5, then 3?
It goes 2, 3, 4, 5 on one side, and then on the other side there's a micro setting.
Okay, so I would go for you. I would go 2, and then possibly on the micro setting 0.5 or 5. That's possible.
More than what we use for espresso.
Yeah, slightly more than espresso, yeah. So 2's for espresso. I would go 2.5 then for the Baratza. Yeah.
Yep. So what I've been doing is I made a coffee straight off the roaster to grinder to cup, and then I've made one at 14 hours off roast and one at 24 hours, and then another one at 30 something, which is this one.
Good. And out of all of them, Chris, I mean, what did you find was just from a taste perspective, which one did you find? Or have you found that the taste has kind of climbed and increased over the number of hours that you leave it for?
Well, I'm sorry to be a bit of a weirdo here, but this is what I get, and it matches up with my past experience. But straight off the roast, 0 is very good. And then the deterioration sets in and it reaches a nadir at 24 hours. Turns the corner and starts coming back up again.
Okay, good.
So
Yep.
the time to not drink it was 24 hours after, but actually straight off the roast is great. That's my inexperienced taste buds.
Yeah. No, I think there's merit to that, Chris. I mean that happens a lot of the time with roasters. I mean, when you're showing people coffee. So when I'm selling coffee to a new client, for example, often what happens is we take coffees that are slightly rested but haven't rested enough, and they're in that gap between rested and not rested enough. And when you're tasting them with clients, they're very underwhelming. Often what happens is when you taste coffee with clients, you'll taste coffee that is almost kind of 7 days, 8 days, 9 days, 10 days old, because you're only tasting it within almost 10 minutes of a tasting session with that client. You know, you're not leaving them the entire bag and having them prepare it for their customers. So they can't see the decrease in texture and the decrease in taste. So what you're doing is you're looking to manipulate your coffee kind of for one espresso, and that espresso essentially, or that flat white or that cappuccino, if we think about it logically, has to be a 2-sip coffee. So, you know, that customer is not essentially going to drink the entire cup of coffee. Now remember, I'm selling this to you, Chris, as a new cafe customer of mine. You're not going to drink the entire cup of coffee. And why? Because I could have 2 coffees or 3 coffees I want to sell to you. So what I typically do in this case is I would definitely not bring a 24-hour cup to you. I definitely not bring a 2-day, 3-day, 4-day to you. I would almost bring a 12-day to you. And the reason why I would do that is all I want to do is manipulate the coffee, or have enough range and movement to manipulate the coffee enough so I can get you one unbelievable cup. And I can do that with a 12-day-old coffee. The problem with a 12-day-old coffee is, and I'm using 12 as a general example, it could be 14, it could be 16. The problem with that is that after you open that bag, the decrease in flavor is astronomical. You know, so in the next 2 days or 3 days, you'll have a huge decrease in flavor because your coffee is obviously so old. You know, it really doesn't have anything to repel the oxygen that's being forced in onto it. So it literally just gives everything up. Whereas if you have a coffee that is 24 hours old, 1 day old, 2 days old, 3 days old, it's still repelling, it's still attracting, it's still giving away gas, it's still pulling in oxygen, it's working. You know, it's almost breathing. And that's where you find that if you take it straight off the roast, it's great to taste, but also for that kind of 1 cup, 2 cup, and then you leave it 24 hours and it dives down, you know, and that's just it absorbing and releasing its gas. And then 2 days, 3 days, 4 days after that, you find it's almost exactly the same. And then kind of 4 days after that or 5 days after that, it starts to shoot up again, which is great for us. As roasters, it's phenomenal because honestly, I'm going to roast coffee now. In 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, I want that entire lot of coffee sold. You know, I don't want it sitting in my warehouse. So it just gives me enough time to put it into a customer's space, gives him enough time to use his existing stock, and then 7 days later, go into this beautiful ripe stock that he can use. If that makes sense. So that's a little trick from a commercial roaster side, yeah.
From a point of view of a home consumer, it's either going to go into a jar which maybe I'm opening every day, yep, or it's just not going to go into anything airtight at all because I'm going to be using it up so fast. Yep. And so after 3 days of sitting in a non-airtight container, how does that compare with if it had been in an airtight container?
No, I think 3 days on a non-airtight container would be the same as almost 6 days or 7 days in an airtight container.
So we can speed up the aging by not sealing it up.
I wouldn't seal it up. Look, I wouldn't seal it up if I wanted to use it, if I had overflow and I wanted to test or reuse it within a couple of days. The beauty behind roasting 100-gram batches is the fact that when you use them straight off the roast, you will get flavor out of them. You will get texture out of them. Now, if you think about it, Chris, what you've just done there is use 16 grams of coffee. But I might drink 4 coffees a day, you know, and I might drink 4 coffees a day today and maybe 3 coffees tomorrow. That's almost my entire 100 grams that I've roasted gone, if you think about it logically, you know. Now it's time for me to roast again. So I'm almost roasting 3 to 4 times a week, depending on how, you know, often I'm drinking coffee, which is phenomenal.
No, it's daily.
Well, exactly. So what we're saying is if you roast it daily, it's fantastic. You can use it. The minute you leave your coffee, you find that the flavor decreases, and that's logical. It will do that. And the flavor will only start to increase again kind of 3 days, 4 days past you roasting it. Now that's normal. That's a logical response to your coffee. It has to settle. It has to degas. The key is, you know, what we're trying to say is that roast your coffee as fresh as possible, drink it as fresh as possible. And if you do have overflow, pop it into a container that is not airtight, and that will shorten the lifespan of it'll shorten the lifespan of your coffee, but it will also degas it quicker. So now in 3 days, instead of 6 days, you'll be able to drink that coffee. Okay. Now that's if you have a surplus of coffee. I'm looking at maybe 600, 700 grams of coffee that you're sitting over the weekend and you're not drinking coffee over the weekend for whatever reason, you know. Keep it in a bag, you know, open it up on the Monday and it should be fine to go.
Wayne, you're obviously a true coffee professional because you are not drinking coffee on the weekend. It's your time off.
Listen, you stop recording this video. Stop recording this video. No, I do go through. So I don't get coffee hangover and I don't get coffee withdrawals. So I can go without coffee for numerous amounts of days and I'll be fine. I think my system is so saturated with coffee that I don't know. I don't know, Chris. I wake up in the morning, I have a cup of tea. That's what I have, you know. So stop recording this. You're putting me in a difficult position. But yes, if you aren't drinking coffee for whatever reason, you know, maybe you're out in the town or you go away for the weekend and there's really bad instant coffee, you know, then at least, you know, you got something good to come around to on Monday. Shaz, how's that brewing going? You haven't been saying anything.
Yeah, I've just done it. I was going to try and follow Chris's method, but with all the talking, I didn't get the details. So I just did the 16 grams. I got as far as 16 grams and then did the 175. I ended up with 175 mils of water. I took it off the boil. Normally I'd take it to 94 or something, but I just took it from the boil.
Okay.
I tried to remember what Chris had said yesterday. I think he bloomed and then for 15 seconds. And then anyway, the total time to end of press was 1.5 minutes.
Okay, that's all right. Did you do exactly what Chris did? So inverted method, and then just tip it over into the cup.
Yeah, I did inverted.
Okay, and happy with the result? What did you get out? Did you get about 150 mils out?
I didn't measure what I got out.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I'll probably wait until it cools a little. It's a little bit muddy at the moment. But I'll wait until it cools down.
Cool. So there's a couple of things you can do with that muddy, you know, that muddiness. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that muddiness in like a V-drip, or especially like a plunger or something like that, that muddiness. Often what people can do, and even on your AeroPress, you know, if you invert it, which is what Chris and Shaz have done, and you put your coffee in, and you put your water in, or if you like me, I put my water in and then my coffee in afterwards, and then you kind of stir it up, or you bloom it, or you do whatever your technique is. Right at the end, just before you plunge it, what you can do is you can actually, like a cupping action, you can scrape the coffee off the top. And what that will do is that will allow you to have a lot cleaner cup coming through. And I'll tell you why. That coffee that we have, that bed of coffee, doesn't just contain one specific size particle of coffee. It contains multiple sizes of particles of coffee. So Shaz, when you're grinding on, your baratza is a conical burr baratza, hey? Or is it a flat burr baratza?
I think it's conical.
Okay, cool. So effectively, if you have flat burrs, why flat burrs are so great is they create an even particle size. Okay, so very little fines. So they have a particle range that goes between 5 and 3 and not 5 and 0. Okay, what conical burrs do is they then create different grind sizes or grind spec sizes. Now, that's great and phenomenal for flavor. So different grind specs through brewing can give you different flavors. It's excellent. But what it can end up doing in your cup is it can end up, you get kind of like a bit of a muddy, kind of grainy type of dirty, sandy type of flavor. So what you can do is you can take a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons and just remove that old coffee off, basically. Okay, if that makes sense. Okay, now you think to yourself, well then, what's the use of a plunger, or what's the use of an AeroPress? Well, essentially all that filter is there to do, yes, is to create a little bit of back pressure, but essentially all it's there to do is just to separate coffee and water. That's what it's there to do. Your extraction takes place in your coffee bed. Okay, that's where your extraction takes place. So if we remove that and then plunge or press, we're going to get a much cleaner cup. We can do that. Essentially, we can do that with everything except for pour overs, obviously, because if you remove the coffee, well, then you're going to have no coffee. But the paper is designed, the micron of the paper is designed to remove that. That's why on a pour over, you don't generally get a dirty cup unless your grind is too fine. Yeah. So that's what I would do, just to give you a bit of a cleaner cup. I generally like to clean my cups off if I'm using natural processed coffees, because they're just so rich and so full. I like to clean my cup off. For high altitude coffees, full Arabica coffees, but high altitude coffees, I like to leave the grind inside my cup, purely because I like to get as much flavor as possible and as much complexity as possible out of those coffees. Otherwise, I find it very tea-like. So that's just another trick of just helping you, yeah. Chris, Justine was asking what scale you're using.
Oh, I just bought a little jeweler's scale on AliExpress. So I can't really give you a particular brand or supplier. That was some years ago now. I was a bit lucky in that I got one that works well. It's good quality. Some of them are quite crappy.
Yep. is anyone we've all got scales, I take it, eh? We're all using scales when we weigh out our coffee and kind of play around with our coffee. Any scale will do, and you can adjust your brew ratio to give you round numbers. So some scales only measure a 0.1 of a gram. Others measure a 0.01 of a gram, and then others 0.001 of a gram. And that will give you your 16.2224, or 16.322. Some scales just measure grams, so it'll essentially be 16 grams. It might be 16.5 or 16.6, but effectively on the scale it'll show you 16. So you can manipulate your ratio to give you round numbers if you're worried about the 0.3 or the 0.4 or the 0.5. You can manipulate it, but essentially, as long as you have a scale, Justine, I think it's a invaluable tool to bring.
Yeah. Ideally, you need at least 1/10 of a gram.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%, Chris. I mean, that's ideal. That's what your Kayas and all those type of scales have. And your small little diamond scales. That was a big hit thing back like almost 12 years, 13 years ago in the coffee industry. Is all our sales guys got given little diamond scales, and everyone thought we were bloody diamond dealers, backdoor diamond dealers. But we were testing coffee. We didn't know how the hell they worked and why we needed them, because none of us were using brew ratios back then. But it was just great to have them, and they look pretty cool. But essentially, you want a scale that can measure kind of 1/10 of a gram, I think, or even 1/100th of a gram. But then you're getting into like Kayas and stuff like that.
I think 1/10 of a gram is enough, and you can get them on eBay in Australia you can get them for eBay for less than $10.
Yeah, look, I mean, scales have become wonderful things nowadays, and accessible. So, yeah, absolutely, you don't have to spend a fortune for them. I think the Kaya scales and stuff like that, or $200, or I mean, that's exceptional. Yeah.
Yeah, you only have to spend 10 or 20 online, but make sure you get one that'll take 500 grams. Otherwise, you'll have trouble when you're trying to put all your gear on and
100%,
and then make your coffee. If
100%.
200 grams, it'll barely take a coffee cup and it'll be maxed out.
Yeah, and also make sure the weighing bed is big enough so that you can put something like a plunger on it, or you can put something big enough on it, and not a small little diamond scale where you can literally fit portafilter on. So, make sure you get those type of things. Yeah. Shaz, have you tasted that coffee yet? You still kind of waiting?
The coffee's good. There's a lot of caramel and chocolate coming out of it, so it's sort of a little bit like less on the fruity side and more on the caramel chocolate toffee side.
Give it some time. Give it a weekend.
So Wayne, in our last 5 minutes, we should reflect on what Shaz is telling us, especially, and partly on what I'm telling us, and anyone else who's been tasting this coffee on this profile, as to what it tells us about the profile itself.
Okay. So effectively, ladies and gents, what it tells us about the profile is that profile is we're trying to get to that quintessential espresso based profile. So we're trying to get your medium profiles to be that medium profile that after a couple of days, when I say after a couple of days, Chris, probably after a good 4 days to 5 days, Shaz, you'll find that those fruity flavors start to come out. Now, what you're not going to get is you're not going to get super intense acidity. You're not going to get that. Your fruity tastes are going to be more like a cooked fruit or a stewed fruit, okay, a full rich fruit, and not a super intense light fruit. Now, the reason why we've done that, if you look at the profile and you compare that profile to the lighter profile that I've given you on the About the Profile log, which I think Shaz, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not looking at the profile now, but I think is a 1.6.
1.6 was the default, and 1.2 you put for light.
That's it. So 1.2 for light. So what we'll notice and what we'll see with that is, and if we change them on our KAFFELOGIC roast profile, KAFFELOGIC Studio, if we change them, what you'll see is you'll see that we're decreasing the length of roast and we're increasing the length of roast for the medium. Now, what we're trying to do there is the roast profile is there to pull out as much of that intensity, as much of that flavor, and as much of that acidity as possible. What we're doing in the last minute to 2 minutes of the roast. Now, that's from 1.2 to 1.6. What we're doing is we're purposefully not removing the acidity, but we're changing the acidity. So a little bit of longer roast is not removing acidity, it's just changing the acidity. We're caramelizing more sugars. What we're doing with the acidity is we're taking a bright fruit and we're creating more of a stewed fruit or a cooked fruit. That's what we're trying to do. Now, in fact, what we're doing at the end of the roast, if we look at 3 kind of curves, at the end of the roast, we're still trying to maintain our body, but we're trying to create a synergy of flavors. So we're trying to create almost like a balance of flavors to the end of the roast. Why we're doing this is because for a medium roast profile that we would typically use in our espressos, we typically use in our AeroPresses, these type of big full body type styles of pressing, we want to maintain body. Shaz, if I had to take that AeroPress that you made, if I had to take that and I had to dump 150 mils of milk over that, I need a coffee that will stand out over that milk. That's what I need. Now, if you had to add a little bit of water to what you've just brewed now, or a little bit of milk, you'll find a little bit more acidity. You'll find a little bit more flavor coming out. Okay, now that's what the roast is designed to do. It's designed to say, I'm maximizing what I have, but I'm also building a relationship. I'm building a roundness of flavor. So that when you slam me with milk or when you slam me with water, like an Americano or not even a long black, but more an Americano style coffee, okay, you're definitely going to get flavor coming through. Okay, and that flavor you get coming through will be the body, will be the intensity, and will be the acidity. Okay, specifically with the Kenyan, it definitely will. Kenyan coffee, when you push it to that type of profile, is just bold and intense. You know, take it to the 1.2 and even to the 1, and you'll start to pick up those beautiful, delicate fruits, those almost acidic fruits that will start to come. But then what you find is you don't find the intensity in the body coming through. So we've purposefully roasted the intensity in the body out at the last part of that roast. Okay, if that makes sense.
Well, certainly my tasting, I was surprised by the balance, but also really the mildness that, aside from the one that was within 12 hours of the roast, that I was getting sweetness and I wasn't getting profound acidity at all, but
Yep.
very, very balanced. It was a easygoing sort of a mix to my palate.
Yeah, and I think, Chris, I think that's exactly what the profile's created to do. Remember, the profile can also work on different coffees. So if you had to take a Costa Rica at the same altitude and you had to roast it at the same altitude with the same profile, you know, we're not going to expect the same flavors out of a Costa Rica or the same flavors out of a Guatemala, but we're going to expect different, unique flavors from the Guatemala and from the Costa Rica. And then I think is the essence of the roast profile is use the same roast profile for the same altitude, and you will get what the roast profile is trying to do. And Chris, this is my discussion that I've been having with you over the last couple of weeks, at almost ad nauseum, is saying to you and everyone, this is the discussion I've been having with Chris and bugging him, is saying, why can't we push the profile higher? You know, what happens if we just, do that with the line and it's all to say basically is how far can we push our profile to allow KAFFELOGIC to convert coffee into what we want it to be. And effectively, the only way that you can bring out flavor and attract more flavor to coffee and round coffee is by working it a bit harder. And that's what your altitudes do. That profile is working coffee a bit harder. And Chris, that's why you get that balance. That's why you get that sweetness. Specifically at the end of the roast, because what you don't want to do at the end of the roast is you don't want to essentially bake your coffee. The minute I start baking my coffee...
We're gonna cut out soon on our meeting.
Okay.
I wonder if we should have a quick last word from Shaz, since she's just had another sip.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I'm tired of talking.
Oh, yeah, a little bit more acidity has come out, a little bit more sweetness. So in the background underneath, a little bit roasty, which is probably good for the espresso. But what's really nice is it's not getting those smoky burnt flavors, which I got on the default profile when it went straight to number 3 or default 3.6 or something, I think it was. That was the very first roast I did.
Right, yeah. Thanks, Shaz. Look, we are going to cut out, so thanks everyone for joining us. And we'll be back on Monday with a vengeance. We've got another topic.
Please taste your coffees. Taste your coffees. Taste your coffees over the weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Taste them. They are going to develop a bit more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Should we have another meeting quick, Chris?
Yeah, we'll jump back in again, Wayne? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm hundreds.
Okay.
I'm hundreds. Thank you.
See you.
Cheers.